me. I already got second place in a previous competition. So I asked the front desk if there was any space to put up my poster, and there was. So I pitched my results to someone interested, and afterwards they asked me, what would you do next? And I said, well, in a perfect world, I would try to replicate this experiment in the Mediterranean. And they said, oh, I have a collaborator in Cyprus and they may have space for you to run this experiment. So I stayed in contact with them. And 2 months later, I was in the country of Cyprus conducting another experiment. And now I'm submitting the data for my thesis. So it was quite the success.
Great. So this is me about 10 years ago. I decided to work on a project in Nepal with my professor from undergrad. And I went into the project knowing that I was going to live in Nepal for 6 months and I was going to be the only woman in my research camp, right? So my colleagues looked a lot like this. They were Caucasian males. And we were in Southeast Asia. So all of our Nepalese colleagues talked to them, deferred to them, respected them more than me. And my first few weeks were really hard. I was very shy. This also has to do with some cultural differences, but as the only woman and also the only brown woman, I felt very shy, very uncomfortable for the first time in my life. I would not talk to people and I wasn't making the most out of the experience, which was unfortunate because I had worked for the same professor and my field skills were above my colleagues, right? So I was better at my job than them. And so it was very, very, I was very much a wallflower, guys. I was scared to talk, scared to speak up. And it was an unfortunate situation. And I realized I needed to take advantage. I had 5.5 more months and I wanted to take advantage of this really great opportunity to work in Southern Nepal tracking tigers. So we can advance. What are some of your fears around networking? It's very valid to have fears. And I would say about 10 years ago, one of my, my biggest fears was, thinking that I wasn't smart enough to belong there. I was giving this really great opportunity to study tigers in Southern Nepal. And I couldn't believe it. Yep. Shyness not accepted. Right. And it's very normal. Feeling incompetent. Exactly. Awkwardness, rejection. Yeah, I've definitely felt all of these things, all of them. Cultural differences. Yes. Yes. And so, yep. And we can flash forward. So by my 3rd week, I called my mom and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I need to speak up for myself. I need to start talking to people. So I went out to breakfast at our research camp and there was a woman and a man there that I hadn't seen before. And I just sat down, I said, good morning. I brought my own coffee from the States because I knew they weren't going to have the best coffee in Southeast Asia. If you've ever done field work there, it's instant coffee or chai tea. And I brought my French press and my coffee out. I started talking to them. And it turns out they ran Nat Geo in Nepal. And so they became my friends. There was a crew that they brought to tape some content of rhinos. They became my friends and they started introducing me to, some other park rangers. And because I befriended the head of National Geographic in Nepal, people started talking to me more, even though there were cultural differences. They realized I had some kind of clout. I also became friends with the women who lived in the village next to Chitwan National Park where I worked. They would invite me over for dinner, and my colleagues who were Caucasian males never got an invite. So I ended up like thriving in this community in Southern Nepal. And I made the most of my next 5.5 months just by sitting next to someone, stepping out of my comfort zone, and offering to share a cup of coffee. So yeah, being afraid to network is very valid. Being afraid to talk to someone is also very valid, but you can just start off with one person, right? You don't have to talk to a whole group. So those are my recommendations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And so part of successful networking is building a brand, having a little bit of confidence in who you are. And so successful brand building can give you a little bit of confidence in initiating new networks, that one contact, building your self-esteem, and eventually, filling those academic gaps to further science. And so we're going to switch screens to Amanda's presentation, and she's going to be guiding us through on how to build your brand.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. And I'm going to share my screen. So what's up, everybody? Listen, I've had a great day. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I just realized I got on the scale this morning. I realized I gained 5 pounds, so I probably ate too much. So I guess I need to do a little exercising this week, but we'll see what happens. So today we're talking about our science brand. So what are you going to get out of this part of the WOCShop? Let's talk about it. We're going to talk about how you can get official online, get ready to talk your ish, explore your options, and show the receipts. So you all saw my headshot. This is the interview ready Mandy, right? But the reality is that's the Mandy that shows up at the interview. But this is the Mandy that you're going to get, okay? One thing we can say about people who are brown, listen, we can switch it up. So I try to do that. You got to keep them on their toes. So a little bit about me. I got my bachelor's degree in integrated marketing communication at Winthrop University. And then I also got my master's degree in public affairs. And so you're saying, okay, well, what's integrated marketing communication? So the best way I can say it is integrated marketing communication is just kind of a holistic view of marketing. So, we can say we're the appetizer with a little sampler. You all have been to Applebee's or somewhere, and you can get a little buffalo wings, you can get a little quesadilla, all of that, right? So I would say that integrated marketing is basically what we have. And so you get a little bit of content marketing, branding, graphic design, learn how to do a little bit of email marketing, photography. So, basically a jack of all trades, master of none, but don't tell anybody. So some of the collaborations I did, of course, I've collaborated with the WOC Space, the North Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Foundation, the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce, the American Bar Association, and also VF Brands, which is kind of an umbrella company that owns like Vans, North Face, Timberland, etc. Also, I do freelance photography, as I mentioned earlier. And so I was super excited that one of my photo shoots got actually featured on Essence.com, which is a really popular periodical that's targeted towards African Americans. And so in summary, you could just say, I'm a professional hype woman, right? We all know DJ Khaled. Listen, I'm here to support you and make sure that you're talking your ish. What I love to do, see you do the damn thing, okay? So I hope I can just keep it 100 with you all, okay? Let's be honest. We've all been to a bunch of workshops where everybody speaks so proper, everybody's just kind of bland. They're kind of doing the kind of blase blah, right? But here in the WOC space, we want to make sure that you all feel welcome. We want to make sure that you know that, hey, this workshop is for you. So I hope you allow me to keep it 100. And so, you know, normally in my presentations, I have these cute branded slides. I know WOC Space, you all do a great job of that. But listen, in the words of Sweet Brown, ain't nobody got time for that, okay? So all I ask from you all is that you all give me good vibes. Hype me up a little bit. I know we're virtual, we're not in person, so it's a little different. So, you know, Mentimeter, that's cool. But listen, guys, I need you all in the chat. Hype me up a little bit, okay? I need it because I'm here by myself, but I'm here for you all. So I hope that you all can send me a little love in the chat. So let's talk about Google, right? So if you Googled something just this morning or last night, let me know in the chat. Let me know the last thing that you Googled. Well, am I gonna be able to see the chat in the full screen? Nope. Well, let's see, somebody said something. Minorities in aquaculture. Salary comparisons. Okay. How to make live stream work. It's okay. NOAA jobs. Okay. So you all may have heard of this awesome lady named Tiana.
NOAA.
Hold on, did somebody say something? Okay. Okay, I can see the chat now, great. Tiana said, listen, you ain't even gotta ask nobody about me. I'm certified on the internet, read about it. You looking for me, go and pull up. And so today, we're living by what Tiana got to say. So when you Google me, listen, I don't know why my mom gave me the most generic name in the world, but hey, I'm working on it, right? Amanda Wise, when you Google, hey, a little bit of information comes up about me. If you Google Kelsey, hey, we got some information about her too. And so the goal is to get you official like a referee whistle. So you say, how do I make myself Googleable? Is that a word? I don't know. It may be an Urban Dictionary, but today we're going with it, okay? So the way that you do that is you secure your own domain, and we'll talk about that. You create your website. You get some great content, such as pictures, videos. You make sure that you're putting them on your website and all of your social media pages, and you make sure that you're always distributing great content. So I know we got somebody named Isabel on the chat. And so Isabel, what I went ahead and did was look up your name. Now, Isabel, if you unmute yourself, you can tell me how to pronounce your name correctly, because I know I'm going to butcher your last name.
It's Isabel Sanchez Viruet.
Okay. I'm just going to look, everybody else heard what she said, so I'm just going to leave it at that, okay? But one thing I want you to realize is that it doesn't take a lot to take control of your branding and of your name and domain within the virtual space. And so what I went ahead and did was I went to Google Domains and I looked up your name, as you can see. And so right now, your full name, I know you do a hyphen. I don't think you can use hyphen in domains, but you can actually use either one of these domains, and it's only $12, okay? That's one bottle of Shea Moisture products. That's 2 venti coffees. Well, actually, with the inflation, it may only be 1.5 venti coffees at Starbucks, right? And so one of the other good things about Google Domains, and one reason why I use them is because, you know, a lot of folks, they'll use GoDaddy or other domain providers. And when I say domain, I'm actually talking about the website that you type in your web browser. So I want to make sure that everybody understands that's what I mean when I say domain. But one of the good things about Google Domains is that their prices don't fluctuate a lot. Sometimes when you use other domain providers, such as GoDaddy, the first year will be 99 cents. And depending on how much traffic you get, they can price gouge. So let's say you go viral and you become like an internet sensation. Well, the next year they'll say, hey, well, it was 99 cents the first year, but since you're so popular, hey, let's go ahead and make it $2,500, right? So that's why a lot of times when I'm dealing with clients, I always recommend that you use Google Domains, because it's usually a flat rate, $12 per year. And I always recommend that folks go ahead, if they can, to prepay for multiple years, just so you don't have to worry about their renewal. Another good thing that happens when you get a domain through Google is that you have what we call free email forwarding. And so a lot of times, one thing I notice is that when folks are getting really official, they like to have emails that are actually on their domain, right? It just makes you look a little bit more official. I'll be honest with y'all, like when I go to Instagram pages and, you know, folks are like, have millions of followers and then they'll say for booking, go to so-and-so at yahoo.com. I'm like, come on now, like you have, you know, 1 million followers, you got a website, like why is somebody still booking you at yahoo.com? And so with Google domains, what you can do is essentially you can forward it to your personal Gmail account. So Sydney, I think Sydney had registered for this actual event. So let's say Sydney has a Gmail account. So sydneywoodruff@gmail.com. With Google domains, what you can actually do is set it up so it's sydney@sydneywoodruff.com. And so it makes it look super official. And then actually it'll go to your personal Gmail account. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. And so once you get your domain, what you can actually do is go to a web, you can actually create your own website. And so some of the popular website providers is squarespace.com as well as Wix. And so with Squarespace, both of them are what we call Wysiwyg editors. And so with a Wysiwyg editor, what that means is what you see is what you get. So back in the day, you know, a lot of folks had to do like really hard coding. Anybody ever use MySpace? If you ever use MySpace and you had your little friends or whatever, you would see people who would have all of these graphics and it would be like, I don't know, flowers coming down, would have music videos, and you would have all of this HTML. That's what they call the coding language. And for some people that was super intimidating, including myself. So I would just have the basic templates, but you know, folks got really creative. Well, now with websites, you don't have to do all of that coding. Some geniuses who realize, hey, people want websites, they want to be able to do it themselves. They created places like Squarespace as well as Wix. And so with them, they have all of these templates that are available for you, and you can drop and drag your photos, you can type in the text that you need, etc. And so once you secure your actual domain, you can connect it to what you call a website, right? And so you actually have to have your website hosted in the cloud. And so that's what Squarespace and Wix provide. So, you know, generally you can get a domain for about, a website for about $12 a month. Wix is a little bit more expensive. Sometimes you can get a promo code. So here's an example of someone who attended the workshop last year. Karina Fish did a really great job. I definitely suggest that you all look at hers just because she has a great portfolio website. Some information that you should include on your portfolio website is, of course, information about yourself, you know, your background, your pedagogy, etc. Also, you want to make sure you have some great photos of you, such as a headshot, because one of the things is once you start really, you know, promoting your website and Google starts pulling up the feeds from your website, those pictures are going to show up under Google Images, right? So you want to make sure that you're putting professional headshots on there, etc. Also making sure that you have a portfolio section so that you're displaying all of the work that you have. And then you want to make sure that you have a contact page, etc. And then one of the things when we talk about photos is, let's make sure that we're always using HD photos, right? I always pick at the Android folks because I say, listen, you all are giving me blurry energy and we need HD energy when we're up here posting photos, because those photos will be here forever, right? And you don't want somebody to say, hey, well, I heard you're great, but why are you kind of blurry? You can kind of see them, you kind of cannot. So let's make sure that we're always doing, you know, things with clear 1080 pixels or higher. And so here's an example of a science communicator, Danny Washington. You all are probably familiar with her. Danny has a great following. And one thing I can say about Danny's page is that she always uses really great quality pictures, you know, making sure that she has great angles, great lighting. And y'all, you know, studies have been shown to say that, studies have been done that says that if you use great pictures, people are more likely to engage with your content. And so you all have probably noticed that even yourselves, right? Like you see somebody, you're like, man, those photos are like really crisp. Like, okay, the light was doing what it needed to do. So just make sure that you always keep that in mind whenever you're posting stuff on your social media accounts as well as your website. And so the biggest goal is for you to be able to actually create a brand with this. And so I want to stop for a moment and see if anybody can identify these brands that are on here. Okay, somebody said IKEA, MasterCard. And there's a person who says hello there on all of their TikTok and Instagram videos. Yep, Leslie got it right. It's Tabitha Brown. And so let's talk about branding, right? Branding essentially is, people say that term all the time, right? It's people throw out buzzwords, but let's just talk about what is branding. Branding is the imagery that people get when they think about you or your product that you're trying to sell. And so it's very important that when you are trying to create your brand, that you get it right so that people remember you and your product associated with different imagery. And so the first thing that you do is you get a logo, then you choose some colors, then you choose a font, make some templates for your social. You stay authentic, of course, and you're always, the most important thing is that you stay consistent with your branding. So I would say that a lot of folks in the science industry, right, they're consistent with their branding, right? No matter where you go, you're gonna see a Hawaiian shirt, some of these little shoes, and some of these khaki shorts, right? They're staying consistent. But I think what really needs to happen is we need to switch up the brand. And so I'm grateful that we have Black and Marine Science because it's showing, hey, everybody doesn't have to look the same. But let's go back to branding, right? So as you can see with these posters and these logos, those are some of the things that are really cool about templates. You can kind of peruse those things through. Let me click through a couple of slides. There's some companies called Canva as well as Stencil. They're great graphic design programs that you can use that are kind of user-friendly. You don't have to have like a deep graphic design background, such as, professionals a lot of times use programs that are intimidating, such as InDesign, Illustrator, or Photoshop. Now they've made it really easy. Hey, go to Canva, log in, pick some colors, drop in some templates. You can also use a program called Stencil. And so let's go back to Coolors. And so the cool thing about them is they actually let you play around with different colors. And so I always say that when you're thinking about colors, some people say, oh, it's not that big of a deal, but it actually is. And there's a lot of science behind what type of colors that you use, right? And so like, I'll give you an example with the WOC Space, right? A WOC Space, they were very intentional about the colors that they chose because, you think about Black because of course it's a space for people who are minorities and et cetera, right? You want to make sure that they understand that part. But then also you see how it has the rainbow colors to show that it's an inclusive environment. So I think they were very intentional about a WOC Space and about the colors that they choose. Also, you think about Black and Marine Science, right? Of course, it had brown because it's for Black people, brown people, but then also the blue to incorporate the marine science in there. And it's the different layers of blue. So they wanted to make sure that it was, of course, showing that it's dealing with aquamarine science and et cetera, but also the different brightness of it to show that, hey, it's an inclusive environment. So also just make sure that when you're thinking about colors, don't just say, hey, I like Black and white, but that doesn't go with your brand, right? Audra does filters, right? Water filters. It wouldn't make sense for Audra to say, hey, let me use red and white when she's selling water filters. So just make sure that you're cognizant of that with your brand. So I would always say that when you're looking for your brand, the first thing I want you to do is write down some adjectives that you want to describe your actual brand. Say, hey, if I want my brand to be inviting, you're going to use more warm colors. You're going to use more bright colors. You're not going to use like super dark colors and that's it with no, contrast. So always keep those things in mind. And then also with Google Fonts, right? Google Fonts is a great tool and it's free. It allows you to kind of explore some different fonts. I would always say this, you can always get very customized fonts, but you also want to have a primary font that you can use on multiple computers. And so what I mean by that is when you're using Microsoft products, there's a set list of fonts that you can actually use. So like Arial, Calibri, Times New Roman, right? So you want to make sure that even though you have a custom font, such as they do in a WOC Space, you want to also have a backup font, essentially, an alternative font for when you're using PowerPoint, when somebody else is uploading your content. So that way everything's not kind of going crazy. And so the reason why I say fonts matter is, this is a prime example, right? So You'll Always Be Mine is written in multiple it's written multiple times, but the difference is that it's in different fonts. And as you all can see, that scary font at the bottom makes You Always Be Mine a little bit more creepy. It's giving Joe from You on Netflix, right? So you want to make sure that you're very careful about what type of fonts that you're using. And so the next thing I wanted to talk about is your portfolio, right? Because you all are in the science arena. It's very important for people to know what you're working on, what you're researching. And so, some of the top 4, and definitely chime in from, other science folks. Some of the ones that I saw when we're Googling, folks in your field is ResearchGate, ORCID, Academia, Google Scholar. And so I would definitely say, make sure that you're trying to upload all of your publications on all of those different sites, just because the more you're uploading your content to those sites, the more likely your pages, your websites, your content, your name is going to actually show up when people Google you. And so definitely when you actually create your website, don't recreate the reel. So when you have a portfolio section, you can simply link it to your ResearchGate, right? You don't have to actually upload it directly to your website, just link it. And so the last thing is to keep your receipts. And so when you're building your brand, a lot of times folks will say, well, Audrey just kind of talked about this, how she was kind of the most competent person in the field when she was working. A lot of people say, well, oh, you were? Yeah. Make sure that you're taking pictures of everything that you're doing. Make sure that you're documenting all of your accomplishments, et cetera. And toot your own horn. Make sure that you're putting all of that information on your website too, because that's a part of your brand, your accomplishments. I think specifically for women a lot of times don't talk about all of the great things that they do. And so when you're talking about your social media presence and you're talking about your website, make sure that you're talking about the great things that you're doing. So just keep them receipts just in case. And so that's it. I'm going to turn it back over to Kelsey.
All right. Let's go back. Thank you so much. That was really great. Just a quick question. What kind of fonts do you recommend that are universal? That would be good.
I think Arial is a very common font. Calibri is a very common font. You have what you call sans serif fonts, which is kind of the more clean fonts that people are kind of gravitating to, which means it doesn't have like those little extra lines, kind of like how you have with Times New Roman. So if you're trying to go for like a more modern brand, definitely like an Arial, Calibri, Trade Gothic. Those are some of the kind of common fonts that people use.
Awesome. If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can answer them.
Sweet. Okay. So now we are going to transition into how to write an elevator pitch. And so on the next few slides, I'm just going to give you like, I'm just going to give you like an easy formula on how, to walk into a room and introduce yourself very quickly in 30 seconds. I use this formula when I'm at a conference, when I'm giving a talk, but also when I'm pitching my business. So I've used it across academia, but also as an entrepreneur. So it's very easy, very simple, and anyone can do it. So we can go ahead. So before we begin, I want you guys to think a little bit about what should be included in your pitch. Just a 30-second intro about yourself. Yep. What do you do? How can people reach you? Your name, exactly who you are and what you do. It's like the most simple, basic thing. And actually how to reach you is great because when you're networking, you want people to be able to contact you. So all great answers. So the first part is introducing yourself, okay? So my example is, hi, my name is Audra. I'm a postdoctoral researcher in ecology and evolutionary biology at UCLA. So if I'm at any academic meeting, that's the intro I would use. When I'm pitching my business or I'm being an entrepreneur, I say the same thing, except I say, I'm the founder of Filter and we sell sustainable water filtration solutions for at-home use. Second thing you should do is summarize what you do. So I study the effects of inbreeding on genomes and reproduction in large cat species, right? So anytime you walk into a room in academia, right, our goal is to communicate what we do in the simplest form, right? If you only have 30 seconds, if you're given a talk, yeah, you have like 30 minutes to an hour. But if you're just trying to introduce yourself, let people know like what you do, you're the best at what you do. So you're probably also the best at summarizing what you do, right? So this should come easy to everybody. And if it doesn't, that's okay. We're going to practice it in a little bit. And the next thing to do is to communicate a goal or a want. Okay. So like, what are you doing at that event, at that moment, right? Or do you want something? So my communication today is that I'm here to help you avoid being a lurker, right? If you are giving a talk, it's today I'm here to give a talk about my research. Or if you're doing a poster session, or if you're interviewing to be a postdoc or interviewing to be a grad student, right? So yeah, communicate a goal or a want. And the last part 4, is end with an ask or a call to action. And in the first slide where we asked you what should go into a pitch, it was letting people know how to contact you, right? And so my ask today is if you would like to stay connected, please add me on LinkedIn. We talked also about the importance of networking and the importance of connecting with people, and LinkedIn is a really great tool. I am currently applying for jobs in and outside of academia, and my LinkedIn profile is like, you know, getting looked at by a lot of people and a lot of recruiters, a lot of like people who are interested in hiring me. So connect on LinkedIn. They're looking at how many people, you know, you are connected with. They're looking at your resume there, even if you've sent them your resume. So I'm just going to go through my little intro based on these 4 parts. So hi, my name is Audra. I am a postdoctoral researcher in ecology and evolutionary biology at UCLA. I study the effects of inbreeding on genomes and reproduction in large cat species. Today, I am here to help you avoid being a lurker. If you would like to stay connected, please add me on LinkedIn, right? And this equation or, you know, these steps can be adapted to anything you're doing anywhere in life, right? So it'll definitely help you when you're at a conference and you need to talk to someone, but it'll also help you like when you're applying to jobs. It will help you if you're, you know, starting your own company. We have a lot of entrepreneurs in this room, which I'm really excited about. And so we can go on to the next slide. And so we're going to give you some time to actually help you find your pitch. So you can practice those 4 steps.
That's right. So hopefully you have your pen and paper ready, and I will switch back to the previous slide so you have the formula, but I want you guys to spend the next 10 minutes writing your pitch down because we will be sharing them. So I'm going to go
All right, during this time, if you are on our YouTube channel, please, because I finally got it to go live, there's a victory. Please spend this time, thinking about your pitch. How do you want to introduce yourself? And you can share it with us in the chat on YouTube. But yeah, take some time using what you've learned here today. And then for folks inside the room right now, you should be thinking about what it is that you would like to say if you're at a conference setting. What are the main takeaways? And I'm going to be playing music in the background. So I just wanted to let y'all know what was going on for the YouTube folks. Okay, I changed it from turn up to the ocean. That's a little better. Also, if you're on YouTube and you have any questions for us, please put them in the YouTube chat and we can answer those as well. Okay, yeah, we do have a question from YouTube. Hold on, Google. Hey, Google. Hold on, y'all.
Okay, I see the question. It was, how do you keep it professional on social media without getting too personal? So you have to think about what is the purpose of your actual social media page, right? And so you need to think about, for example, this is a very, oh, okay, I thought I saw something. Okay, you have to think about what's the purpose of your social media page, because for example, if you're a blogger, then of course you're going to be giving a little bit more information about your personal life than you would if you're having more of a professional page. So this person said, especially on Twitter. So for example, if you're doing a site, if you're having a social media page that's related to marine science, then you kind of want to stick within that brand, right? And so you want to, it's the same exact question. Okay, got you. And so sometimes people make a decision whether or not they're going to have one brand on there that's professional and then have their own personal professional brand, their own, why am I getting tongue-tied today? Let me slow down. Okay, how about that? So sometimes you have to make a determination about whether or not you're going to have one brand that you're going to have kind of a little bit more of your personal brand in there, as well as professional, or if you're going to actually separate those two. And so, for example, if you are a person such as Tierra Moore, right, Curly Scientist, she puts a little bit of both in there. So while her brand, I would say, is definitely more about activism and about the marine science space, she also talks about her personal life too, to a certain extent. And so I know some people don't necessarily feel they can be that vulnerable. That's a personal decision that you have to make. And so a lot of people say, hey, well, I don't put my children on my social media pages, right? I mean, I talk about my personal woes at work. And so you have to kind of set those boundaries when you establish your page up front. And so just kind of make a mental note. You can even write it down and say, hey, these are the topics that I personally don't want to divulge to the public. And some people, they say, hey, everything is open. And so I would say to you, the more that you are able to engage with the folks that you are with on social media, the better, because a lot of people like realness. They like authenticity, right? And so they like people who are not just kind of giving cookie cutter answers and responses on there, because those are the pages it's kind of like, oh, those are kind of boring, right? I'll give you a prime example. You know, let's talk about brands. One of the most popular brands that you'll actually see on social media is Wendy's, right? And so one reason why Wendy's has always gained so much traction is because they're okay with kind of keeping it funny, being able to relate with normal people. Whereas like McDonald's, their brand is more like, hey, we have a new McRib. Hey, we have a new, I don't know, Happy Meal. Whereas Wendy's actually engages with their folks and are like, hey, dude, you're doing too much. Hey, it's okay. Just hit us up. And so I think you just have to kind of make those decisions about, hey, what is the actual brand that you're trying to push on social media? Does that answer your question, LM?
I have a question. So Amanda or Mandy, if I like am building my website and like building my social media, do you recommend I do it myself? Like, I know you gave us some tools, but like, what if I am not, you know, very, very good with like design or, you know, like picking images, like,
Yeah.
do you recommend I ask someone for advice? Do you recommend that like I hire someone if I can afford it, you know?
Yeah. If you can afford it, then definitely, you know, reach out to some of these marketing professionals. They have plenty of branding professionals. If you reach out to me at amanda@amandawise.com, I can definitely either, you know, definitely direct you into some folks who do that. Currently, I'm booked up right now, but I definitely know some other folks who are really good with branding. You know, I would just say that, you know, I know a lot of you all are still in school and kind of just starting your careers. And so I'll definitely say, hey, if you can do it yourself, kind of, you know, go through YouTube University, you'll be surprised at what you can learn. I would just say that when you start talking about, hey, you want to start developing your brand and et cetera, just be willing to expend at least $500 to $1,000 to kind of get that started with websites and et cetera. But if you don't have the money for it, don't be intimidated by it. Just the biggest thing is I will always say is just getting your brand started, right? We all, you know, what my information looked like, what I put out there 5 years ago is not what it looks like now, right? It's actually time for me to do a revamp of my own personal page. I've just kind of been neglecting it because I've been working on everybody else's page. So I think the most important thing, especially in the science arena, is I think a lot of times people are more forgiving when it comes to your personal brand. But the most important thing is if they Google you, they can actually find some information about you. And so don't be intimidated about that. And definitely look at YouTube. You'll be surprised at all of the tutorials. A lot of the things that I've learned in my own professional development has been actually from YouTube. And another thing that I wanted to talk about, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, is also like business cards. And so some good sites for business cards is Moo, MOO, as well as Vistaprint. And so definitely keep those with you when you're going to conferences. There are also some digital cards that people have that you can share information with them. If you just Google digital business cards, you can pay like $20. And then it's actually something you can kind of tap and give to somebody else's phone, and it automatically loads into their actual phones. I actually put that in the chat for you too. But definitely make sure that you have a way for people to communicate. One thing that I do is I actually use plastic business cards. Don't hurt me. I know you guys, I know it's a marketing tactic, but for me, I know a lot of times when people use paper cards, sometimes people get them wet and etc. So a lot of times I use plastic cards because people hold on to them longer. But definitely when you're using business cards, if you try to do something like such as getting them embossed, making sure they're not just like completely white or something like that, just something to make sure that they stand out. Those things kind of make people hold on to your business cards a little bit more, but definitely be able to share your information quickly with people, especially when you're at those conferences. And so another question was, how do you get started though? How can you build followers? And so I think the first thing is make sure that you have a public page on social media platforms. If you're going to have a private page, it's no need for you to try to be an influencer. It's just not going to work. Okay. And so the next thing that you do is make sure that you're putting out meaningful content and make sure that you're also using hashtags, right? And so, you know, a lot of times the market is getting saturated, but that's the way that people go and explore pages and when they're actually looking for those. And then also making sure that you're tagging relevant pages, because a lot of times, like, for example, when you're on Instagram, you can go to the tag account section of Instagram, and that's where people are looking for additional related content. And then make sure that you're putting it on multiple platforms, right? A lot of times people want to stay just within one social media platform. It's like, oh, I'm just going to stay on Instagram. No, make sure that you're diversifying your social media following. So when you're putting information on Instagram, make sure that you're also putting on Twitter, make sure that you're putting on Facebook. And if it's something professional related, make sure that you're also putting it on LinkedIn. And so I would just say, make sure that you're staying, consistent with this, because I think a lot of times people get disheartened by the process. They're like, oh my God, so-and-so has 100,000 followers. What they don't know is that person's been actually having their page for like 8 years, right? And so don't think that it's an overnight success, that you're going to be an overnight success, unless you go viral or something like that, or you just have some kind of explosive moment. That's more than likely not going to happen. It's more of an organic process. And don't be afraid to collaborate with people, right? So I would say that's always a good thing. If you know folks who have, larger page followings, make sure that you're trying to reach out to them, say, hey, if you mind sharing my content, reach out to your friends, reach out to, submit to different more reputable sites, etc., and see if they'll actually repost your content to kind of drive traffic towards your actual page.
I have a quick question. So I have a fear of posting on social media just because I don't know. It feels like it's going to be permanent. I'm going to get judged a lot, and I was just wondering, how do you overcome that?
I think you have to realize that we all have a story to tell, and that people are really interested in other people. That's what makes social media work, right? You will be surprised. Like, I think some people are just like, oh my gosh, like, for example, my mom, right? She's like the ultimate lurker on all social media platforms, right? She just lurks. And I'm like, you never post a picture, you never make any posts, you never do anything. But let's talk about it. If every single person on social media lurked, social media wouldn't work, right? Somebody has to post content. And I think we also have to remember that people love to be able to relate to other folks. And so I think that we have to remember that somebody may be experiencing the same thing that you have, but they were fearful of actually posting that. So it may have just taken you actually posting that information for them to be like, you know what? I'm so glad that you talked about it. I'll give you a prime example. I think that one of the greatest things that social media has done is talk about the pay gap, especially between men and women, right? And so we didn't know for the longest that men were making I think women was making like 19 cents less on the dollar than men. And it's because folks started talking about it on social media, and they were saying, hey, actually, I'm doing the same exact job as my male counterparts, and yet I'm not making the same amount of money. And it took people being vocal about it and sharing their stories. Did that take a lot of courage? Of course, yes. But just know that somebody needs to hear your story. Somebody needs to experience, or at least be privy to what you're experiencing. So that's the kind of approach that I look at. That's the way I look at it. I think it's a question for Audra and Kelsey.
So I see how long is too long for a pitch. So it depends on the situation, right? So if you're just walking into your room and you're casually introducing yourself, that quick 30-second pitch that we laid out works perfectly. But also that 30-second pitch works perfectly for, say, you're giving a talk, like an hour talk. If you just want to quickly introduce yourself before you give your talk, that works well. But if you are more one-on-one with some person, you can take 1 minute to 2 minutes to talk about yourself, like what you've done, especially when you're interviewing for jobs, right? Like you should be pitching yourself for, I would say 90 seconds to 120 seconds, right? Like 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes. If they're like, tell me about yourself, or who are you and why should we hire you, right? Like you should be talking about yourself for at least 2 minutes to get in all of your really awesome accomplishments, like what you're really good at and like what you're passionate at and why you're good for this job. So it depends on the situation, but I do think like that 30-second, 4-part pitch, introducing yourself, summarizing what you do, communicating a goal and having an ask is great for like 75% of situations when you're just like, this is what I do at an overview, and then you can dive more into it. Hopefully that answered your question.
And I see on YouTube, Jasmine have the question, I have been working remote for years. What are some good tools and resources to use to practice networking? Since I have been remote for so long, I find it hard to network in social settings. And so I would say that there are some good career coaches out here. One of them is Carrie Harris. I think she currently works for, what is the new Facebook name? Muse? I don't know the new name of the Facebook, but she works in HR for them. Oh, oops, Meta. Oh, I was completely off. Okay. And so definitely look at career coaches on social media. If you just kind of type in hashtag career coaches, there are definitely some great resources. And then if you go on like YouTube and look up interviewing skills, those are some great resources that you're going to always find. And then also, because you're working from home, I think it's always great to make sure that you're beefing up your LinkedIn page, because a lot of people are finding out information because, hey, let's be honest, like that's one of the only ways people can find out information about you, because you're not interfacing with people face to face all the time. But I think because some people, we're all becoming a lot more introverted since we're working from home remotely. I think it's always good to, like, if people are going to attend a specific conference, or certain colleagues are going to be there, do a little bit of research on LinkedIn and kind of jot some things down. So that way you can be like, hey, John, it was nice to meet you. I see that you went to University of Miami. I see that their football team is doing so-and-so, or I see that you're researching so-and-so, or I saw that you did a post and you did this on LinkedIn. I wanted to talk a little bit more about it. So I would say just kind of finding those kind of small things that have some commonality, kind of what we mentioned earlier within the WOCShop. I think those are some great things. But Audrey, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, so academia, I think we need to catch up on this, but a lot in like the tech space and entrepreneurial space, they have Slack groups and Slack channels for interest groups. So maybe there could be a Black and Marine Science Slack channel, but it's a community where they have, different conversations. Like, I'm looking to meet people, job posts, I'm looking for resources. Tech space entrepreneurs are really great at this. Like, as scientists, I use Slack as well, but mostly for like lab meetings. But I do think like there might be an interest group in like what you're doing and a Slack channel associated with it. Someone said Meta, it reminds me, Facebook groups, they seem very, old school, but it's a great way to meet people. So I'm a digital nomad, and I've been working remote. So a great way to meet people is to join like expat Facebook groups for business. Like, they have like expat Facebook groups for like business owners. I'm sure there's like marine biology groups. I'm in a bunch of like those Facebook groups, like what are like the crazy like ecological memes and things like that. Like, they're on there, and they're a great way to meet people who share the same interests with you. And you can connect on social media, and you may schedule like a Zoom or like a phone call later to connect, like, hey, I saw that meme that you posted, or I saw you went and did field work here or something. So definitely social media platforms are also, don't forget, a great way to network and meet people, because everyone uses them. So don't be afraid. And like, if you hear of a Slack channel, like, they're pretty great too. Like, I am transitioning to working in tech, and I've met so many people on, Slack channels and interest groups. So those are also like really good ways.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to use the bookmark feature on Twitter as well as Instagram. So when you're finding out information about some folks that you're researching, kind of save a folder on Instagram and be like, That way you can reference it later. And then on Twitter, you can also bookmark. I know it's not as organized, but just kind of keep that in mind when you're following folks, and you can always bring it up later at a conference if you see something really cool to talk about. People love to be flattered about, people love to be flattered and say, oh my God, I heard you're working on so-and-so. Would love to talk a little bit more about it.
I see Tier's question, like, how do you get over the fear of cold walking up to people you don't know and talking to them? Man, I'm always afraid of that because like sometimes it goes well and sometimes, you just get shut down, right? Like you've been to conferences where that one type of person who thinks they're better than everyone, and you've walked up to them and you're just like being curious, being open, being, your authentic self. And you're like, hi, I'd like to hear a little bit more about your research. And you're just like, you get nothing out of them, right? So to be honest, like you're going to get rejected and like, it's really tough. You just have to be able to accept the rejection and keep it moving. Cause like how people react to you is a reflection of them, not of you, right? Like it is a reflection of them, and it's hard not to take it personal. And I do all the time, but I always remember like how people react is a reflection of them, and you have to be willing to accept the rejection. Like it sucks. But like, if you look at the other side, cold walking up to people and just talking to them has started so many relationships, and they can be so warm and so inviting and fruitful. So it's the risk, and I'm still afraid, and I probably will be forever afraid, and I'm going to get rejected. I have been rejected so many times, and I will continue to get rejected. But we are scientists, right? We put in grants all the time. We're always rejected, so we're used to this. But it's hard when it's in person. So if anyone else wants to add to that.
Yeah, and I think it's just important to not have expectations for people, right? Just know that, hey, you're there, you're present, you're trying to have a good time, you're there to learn information at the different, presentations and etc. But just know that, hey, some people are great, great conversationalists. Some people are there, they may be just as scared as you are, right? And so don't go and be like heartbroken when somebody doesn't engage with you and they're not as warm as you expect them. You don't know what's going on within their own personal lives. They may have anxiety, etc. Right? But also know that sometimes people may not be as warm in person just because they have that kind of social anxiety. Don't be afraid to follow up with them on social media. You'll be surprised, like just kind of going into a DM. But regardless, just kind of talk to people and just don't have, I think sometimes people try to go and like they have this specific pitch that they're trying to have. And sometimes you just need to approach people as human beings, right? I'll give you a prime example. I was at one of my friends' weddings this past weekend, and I was just sitting, and the lady, she was just being super friendly. We started talking about football. We started talking about life. And I've been trying to transition into the tech field for quite some time, right? Come to find out, what is she? A global recruiting manager for Twitter. Right? Just sitting there at the wedding reception table. And so we ended up talking after an hour and a half. That's when I found out she worked for Twitter. And so we actually ended up exchanging information. And she was like, you know what? It's just so great to have meaningful conversations with people who have great vibes, who are not trying to get something out of me. So sometimes just talking to people as a person and just not trying to go saying, hey, what is your job? What are you doing? I think sometimes people are so pretentious. And I know that you have limited time when you're at a conference, but some people will receive you better if you just try to kind of be personable and just talk to them, engage with them as a human being first. And then, of course, we all know that you're at a conference and you'll get to that, but just make sure you kind of keep that in mind.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, rejection is part of the game, and you just got to keep trying. And one thing that I like to do is sometimes I'll just ask a question that I already know the answer to. And maybe it's just like complimenting their shoes. It's like, oh, like, I really like your shoes. Where'd you get them from? I know they're from Patagonia, but like, just to like get the ball started in terms of like opening up that conversation, and then finding something to link it to. So somehow you got to transition out of it, but it's a spur of the moment, and sometimes you're not going to get this type of feedback that you want, or the questions, and they might be short with you. But yeah, just like Audra's saying, just kind of keep trying, because you never know what kind of connections you might make. So, any other questions? if not, we can move on to sharing our pitches. If anybody wants to volunteer, I wrote a pitch too.
Awesome. Yeah. Kelsey, why don't you start us off? If anybody
Okay.
wants to share their pitch, if you don't feel comfortable saying it, you can also just type it in the chat.
Okay, here we go. So hi, my name is Kelsey Chiquillo. I'm a PhD candidate at UCLA. I'm going to be starting my postdoc at FIU. And I use multidisciplinary ecology and evolutionary techniques to study an invasive seagrass that has quickly expanded throughout the Caribbean and the Mediterranean. Today, I'm trying to find a collaborator to help expand my fieldwork. So if you'd like to stay connected, please find me on LinkedIn or on my Facebook page.
Great job.
Thanks.
Do we have anyone else who wants to share?
I can go.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Leslie Townsell, and I'm a graduate student in the Marine Science Department at UGA. I study the impacts of climate change on oyster aquaculture along the Georgia coast. Today, I'm here to talk to you about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the field of marine science. If you would like to stay connected, please add me on Twitter and Instagram at melanatedmarsi.
That was great. Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah, that was really great. You actually gave somewhere to go to, which I didn't do. So I need to work on that. Does anybody from the YouTube world want to share in sort of the chat?
I think Mark did.
I don't see it. Does anyone see it?
I'll read it for you. Howdy, I'm Mark. I am the outreach coordinator for the Monitor National Marine Sanctuary. I work to communicate the science and the stories of the sanctuary and its surrounding waters.
Thank you, Mark. That was great. Is there one more on the YouTube channel? Okay, well, shout out to Mark because he just won a filter. So I'm also the founder of Filter. I sell reusable water filters that are compatible with your existing water pitchers. If you own a Pure or a Brita water pitcher, every 2 months you have to throw your filter in the trash. I designed a reusable option, so we're going to give Mark one today. So Mark, we have his email to be able to contact him and get his like shipping information. And yeah, we can send you a filter. And if you have like a picture that you can use it on. So Mark, great job. You are our winner today. And yeah, that's it.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. That was really great. So moving on to our last step, or towards the end. Again, if you have any questions, please don't feel shy and try to put them in the chat and we'll get them to you. But we wanted to leave you with some tips for some, for some networking if you ever find yourself in a pickle. We came up with some things like connect with a purpose. So find the person you want to talk to and ask yourself, why do you want to talk to them? But if you're, if you don't know, if you're just kind of doing a cold introduction, don't be shy, just do it anyways. And try to meet with that person where there's minimal interruptions. So maybe they're grabbing a cup of coffee or getting something, but try to not do it in a group setting. I think that kind of deters from the moment. And then start the conversation by asking a question that you might know the answer to, or just a simple question. Be confident in your brand Listen patiently to get cues to ask the next question. It's a spur of the moment interaction. And share yourself. Share your elevator pitch that you just made. Let them see the human side of you. Don't forget to nurture the relationship. Give them a contact information or a way to reach them, or even find a way that you can reach out to them. That's how I was able to go to Cyprus, was I asked for their information and I just sent them an email, and I just kind of kept in contact with them, and it worked out. So send them a follow-up message, preferably within like a 24 to 72 hours. They might forget about you. And in that email, make sure you say where you met them from. It's like, hey, I'm Kelsey and I met you at this ASLO conference. We talked here. And that'll remind them and get their memory going about where they might have interacted with you. Don't forget to thank them for their time. Time is a valuable resource. And stay hydrated. Always stay hydrated. Keep your breath minty fresh, or wear a mask. And yeah, those are the sort of some of the tips to navigate through any kind of space, actually. So if you have any questions, please don't be afraid to ask. Does anybody want to add anything else to the tips?
Also, one of the things that I recommend, tips for networking, is like, it is like stressful to put yourself out there. So if you're talking to someone and you're not getting anything, just walk away. So remember, care about yourself during this process, because not everybody is like an extrovert, right? Like we're like a community of scientists, right? So a lot of us like being in the lab. A lot of us like, you know, just like maybe doing bioinformatics on our computers. So if you're not getting something back, remember, always take care of yourself. And if it's like not a great, you know, conversation, just excuse yourself, walk away. Self-care, in addition to putting yourself out there, always works.
Yeah, and Twitter is your friend too, right? So while we always talk about trying to have meaningful relationships in person when you're networking, if that's just not something that you can get the nerve up to do, it's okay to go on Twitter. Like, especially in the science community, it's such a robust community, I feel like. So definitely feel free to engage with people. Definitely follow the hashtags that they have for those conferences. Slide in folks' DMs, and so that way you can kind of build that rapport that way. But be okay with that. It's okay. Some people are just going to clam up in person, and you can say, hey, I didn't get a chance to meet you in person, but I saw that you were speaking on so-and-so. A lot of those folks are on Twitter, so feel free to do that too if the in-person networking isn't working for you. I think that's the great thing about social media, is that you don't have to do it in person all the time. You can also definitely make sure that you're reaching out to them on LinkedIn as well.
I have a question. So when we're thinking about specifically being people of color, and for a woke space, women of color, how do you, I don't know, get past that almost wall that we come with, if I'm being honest? You know, when you start talking, just you walk into a room just to even start the networking process, they're already not listening. Like, oh, this is someone coming to give me coffee. They can't be talking about any type of science. So how do you just break the barrier of like even getting in the conversation and being accepted as a person that someone, I don't know, is going to talk to versus something different?
That's definitely happened to me, where you walk into a room and they think you're the secretary, or they think you're like the help, right? So first thing I do is I address the fact that like, that's not me. I'm like, actually, you know, I am a researcher at so-and-so. You should ask somebody else for that, right? And if they're still not reciprocating your energy, it's the same thing. Walk away, because you can't change their mind. I've been in some situations where like I'm interviewing for jobs right now, and I'm seeing like how I'm being perceived. Like I'm seeing like, you know, people who are looking at me as like a woman of color and dismissing me. And I'm also seeing some practices that, you know, reduce bias, where, you know, like the interview process, like I only talk to people on phones, like they don't know what I look like physically, right? And then like I can tell when people are uncomfortable and they're not expecting to see a woman of color. And so my thing is, you know, go where you're accepted. It's better for your mental health. And if you're not accepted, that situation is not for you, but make it clear who you are and what you're doing there. And if they don't reciprocate, I would say for your mental health, walk away, because you will find somewhere where you belong.
But also just remember, like, hey, take up space. I think that's one of the woke spaces slogans, right? I think sometimes people are talking about topics and science, and if it's like if you have something meaningful to say, just join the conversation, right? Don't be afraid to join in the conversation. Of course, if they're talking about eutrophication and that's something that you study, hey, like, you know what? Actually, I've been working on so and so. Just kind of interject yourself into the conversation. But remember, Michelle Obama talked about it. She said, listen, a lot of these big tables, these C-suites, they're not that smart. She was like, they're dumb too. So you remember that, like some of these folks, they try to think they're high and mighty because they have all of these credentials and they've been doing it. Listen, you belong in that room, and you always remember that when you came here. You worked hard to get your degree. You worked hard to be doing the research that you're doing, especially when you did it with basically very little resources, very little support. You belong in those rooms. And so you demand that attention. And listen, as Audra said, if they still trying to disrespect you, walk on out.
And be confident. Just be confident in your brand and be confident in who you are. Well, if there's no other questions, maybe we'll give a little bit more time for people to ask some questions. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming, and we hope you gained something valuable. If you're interested in being a part of the A WOC Space listserv, visit our website, and we can add you on there, and we can send you, we send a newsletter giving you updates on what type of workshops we're doing and our future events. So thank you.
Thank you so much to A WOC Space. So yeah, we still do have some time. If you have any questions, please put them in the YouTube chat or the Zoom chat, and we will answer them. But if not, we can always shut stuff down early because we have so many events going on this week and this day, so we can take a little break. But next up, we have our BIMS dives into ocean funding, talking about how you get the money for ocean research. Okay, so we have someone who is a program officer for NSF, who we all write grants to. So definitely tune in. After that, we're going to be having our BIMS grad school panel. So it's going to be a whole panel dedicated to being Black marine scientists in graduate school and the different paths and different stories that we have. And then after that, we will have our keynote address by Angela Crenshaw, and it's entitled The Ultimate Outdoors Woman. Then we're going to be finishing our day with another new initiative, BIMS Care. And we're going to be having just some tips from a therapist on how we can just stay situated and take care of our mental health during these trying times. So yeah, make sure that you follow A WOC Space. Make sure you follow Black Marine Science. If you want to register for any of our events, we should be live on YouTube. We had a little fumble today, but we are live now. But we also have space inside the Zoom room and some of the events. So just go to our website, bims.org/BIMSweek2, and you will find everything you need. All right, I am not seeing any more chats, any more questions. Okay, I think that's it. Go chill, go get some nourishment, and then join us back for BIMS